Hey, hockey card fans, Hockey Night in Belmont. Went back to Heroes Cards and Comics and picked up some more hockey cards, sticking with the 1974 OPEECHEE set. And got quite a haul here. Let's take a look. First up, we get Toronto Maple Leafs coach Red Kelly. Red Kelly has the most Stanley Cups by a player who's not a member of the Montreal Canadiens or ever played for the Montreal Canadiens. He won 4 Stanley Cups with the Detroit Red Wings and 4 Stanley Cups with the Toronto Maple Leafs and was elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame in 1969. He's got a pretty storied career. His coaching record with the Leafs leaves a lot to be desired. That year they lost in round 1. They were 35, 27, and 16. He also coached for Pittsburgh Penguins and the LA Kings. I think he was the LA Kings' first coach. His teams usually always made the playoffs except for 1 year. This card's in pretty good condition. Other than the cut, this card's actually in great condition. This is the 1 year they did coaches for some reason. So next up we get Guy Lapointe, defenseman, Montreal Canadiens. Elected to the Hockey Hall of Fame. I can't remember what year. But he won 6 Stanley Cups for the Montreal Canadiens and was a first and second team All-Star many times throughout his career. One of the big 3 with Savard and Robinson. Also a pretty good jokester if you read Ken Drine's The Game. Lapointe's, or Pontu as they called him, Pontu, was quite the jokester. Sticking with the Montreal Canadiens, we got Serge Savard, defenseman Montreal. So I got 2 of the big 3 here. Savard won 8 Stanley Cups with the Montreal Canadiens. Next up, defenseman Terry Harper, LA Kings. Harper was traded from Montreal to the LA Kings. He is not in the Hall of Fame, I don't think. Harper won 6 Stanley Cups with Montreal and played with the Montreal Canadiens, LA Kings, Detroit Red Wings, St. Louis Blues, and Colorado Rockies before hanging him up. Not in the Hall of Fame. Probably should be in the Hall of Fame. Not a great goal scorer, which probably hampers his Hall of Fame credentials. He was part of the top penalty killing unit. He rarely scored though, and the Harper hat trick was when he scored 3 goals in a season. First 3 in 1 game. He only accomplished that 5 times in his 18-year career where he scored 3 goals. 3 or more goals, so a Harper hat trick. Sounds like me in my playing days. Next up, we get defenseman Chris Aarons, Minnesota North Stars, rookie card. Drafted in the 5th round, 76 overall. Good enough for the 3rd round this year. Only played 52 NHL games though. So not exactly a household name. Next up, center, Pitt Martin. This card has a little ding in it. Other than that, these cards had all been in great shape. Chicago Blackhawks. He started out with the Detroit Red Wings, played for Boston before going to Chicago. Part of the great Chicago teams of the early 70s. Chicago could just never beat Montreal in the final. Then played his final 2 seasons in Vancouver before retiring. Left winger, Guy Chiron, Detroit Red Wings. Not a bad player. His best years were when he was with the Washington Capitals. He also had played for the Kansas City Scouts and started his career in Montreal. Next up, right winger, Toronto Maple Leafs, Bill Flatt, Cowboy Bill Flatt. Gotta love the beard. That's an airbrush card. Badly done, too. He'd come over to Toronto from a trade with Philly, where he won a Stanley Cup with the Philadelphia Flyers. Doesn't say what Toronto got for him, but he only stayed in Toronto for 1 year before going to Atlanta Flames and then the Edmonton Oilers in the WHA, and then their final season with Edmonton was when they came to the NHL. So he did play with Gretzky for 2 years. Next, defenseman Chris Evans, Kansas City Scouts. He's got a St. Louis Blues jersey on though. So he's probably sent to the Scouts after playing 20 games with St. Louis. He only played 2 games with Kansas City that year, and then spent 31 games with Denver Spurs of the Colonial Hockey League. Then jumped to the W. But he played 241 games in the NHL, mostly with St. Louis, though he did play with Toronto and Buffalo. And center, Jim Lorentz, Buffalo Sabres. I don't have a lot of Buffalo Sabres for this year so far. Very few. Lorenzi won a Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins in 70. Then went to St. Louis, the Rangers, and finally ended with Buffalo for a lot of years. Left winger in Washington Capitals, Dave Kriskow, rookie card. Looks like he's wearing a Chicago Blackhawks jersey. So this is when Washington, the Kansas City Scouts came in the league. This is their first year, was 74-75. And Chris Gow actually went from the Washington Capitals to the Detroit Red Wings that year. Then played for the Atlanta Flames before jumping to the W. But he had played 83 games with the Blackhawks. This one says coach, but it's Lou Angotti. But he's with a player's jersey. He did play for St. Louis Blues in 73-74. Then jumped to the W in 74-75. So he was coaching. He did coach the St. Louis Blues for 10 games. It was 2-5-2. And he coached in 73. He must have been a player coach, 73-74. Where he's 4-18-5. So he must have stepped down as a player and became the coach. That's not something that happens in today's game. Did coach the Pittsburgh Penguins in 83-84. The year before they got Mario Lemieux. That's definitely a strange one. Left winger Vic Hatfield, Pittsburgh Penguins. Longtime New York Ranger. Went to a Stanley Cup final with them, where they lost to Boston. Was part of the Canada team in 72. But I think he left early because of the contract he had with the Vancouver. He left early because of didn't want to get hurt. The Rangers had given him a really good contract, and he was unhappy with his playing time. In his career at Pittsburgh, scored 30 goals twice with Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh had a really good team in the mid-70s. Just could never get over that hump. Defenseman Andre Moose DuPont, Flyers. Love that one too. Love the goalie in the background. DuPont won 2 Stanley Cups with Philly. He was actually a first round 8th overall draft pick in 69 with the Rangers. Then he went to the Blues and finally the Flyers. He also played with the Quebec Nordiques back in the 80s. Really tough defenseman. Right winger Jerry O'Flaherty, Vancouver Canucks. He was a round 3, 36 overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs. 70. Played only 2 games with them before going to Vancouver. No one likes the Leafs. No one wants to stay in the with the Leafs organization in the 70s. A lot of guys left the Leafs. Played 438 games. Left winger Butch Denmarsh, Kansas City Scouts. It looks like an Atlanta Flames jersey though. And he did play for the Atlanta Flames in 73-74. Previously a 15th overall second round pick by Buffalo. Played with them, played with Atlanta, KC, then jumped to the WHA. Center Robert Butch Goring, LA Kings. This card's got a crease in it too, I can see at the top. But overall, these cards are in really great shape. Round 5, 51st overall by the LA Kings in 1969. Played with the Kings up until 1979-80, where he was traded to the Islanders and became the final piece in their puzzle. The Islanders thought he was the final piece they needed. A second line center. And it's too bad for Billy Harris, who was an original Islander, and Dave Lewis. They missed out their chance on a Stanley Cup with that trade. The Islanders probably would have won the Stanley Cup without Goring, but Goring definitely had a great year. He only played 12 games with the Islanders in 1980, and in 21 playoff games had 7 goals and 12 assists for 19 points. So he was definitely a contributor. Defenseman Keith Magnuson, Chicago Blackhawks. He died in a car crash. Spent his entire career with the Chicago Blackhawks as an undrafted rookie, as an undrafted free agent. Went to a couple of Stanley Cup finals with Chicago, just couldn't, and was even a coach for a bit. Center Pete Stemkowski, Rangers. Won a Stanley Cup with the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then went to the Detroit Red Wings, the New York Rangers, where he went to another Stanley Cup final before retiring with the LA Kings. Defenseman Jim Roberts. He also became a winger. Played with Bob Gainey and Doug Jarvis on their shutdown line. Won 2 Stanley Cups with Montreal in the 60s. Then went to the St. Louis Blues. And then went back to Montreal, where he won another 2 Stanley Cups. So he won 4 Stanley Cups all with Montreal on 2 different occasions before retiring with the Blues. And then coached the Buffalo Sabres 1 year. And was an assistant for a lot of years. For some reason, I got 2 Chris Aherns. I don't remember picking that up. Defenseman Yvon Lambert, Washington Capitals. 4th round pick, 38th overall, and 69 by the Pittsburgh Penguins. Played with them for 2 years before going to the Capitals. Right, moving along, we got New York Rangers, Giles Marat. Started his career at Boston, then went to the Chicago Blackhawks, LA Kings, Rangers, Blues, then the WHA for 2 years. Or for a year. Not much playoff success. Only played 29 playoff games, but played 808 NHL games. Defenseman Noel Price. I got a lot of defensemen in this one. Atlanta Flames. He'd played with the Leafs in the 50s. Didn't win a Stanley Cup. Then played with the Rangers, Detroit Red Wings, Montreal Canadiens, Pittsburgh Penguins, LA Kings. He only played 12 NHL playoff games. It wasn't until the expansion era they actually started playing regularly. Couldn't crack the big lineup in the original 6. Won 3 Eddie Shore awards in the AHL, though. Defenseman Jerry Korab, Buffalo Sabres. This guy was for the time period, he was 215 pounds. He was a big boy by NHL standards. Even today, he'd be a big boy. Started with the Chicago Blackhawks, Vancouver Canucks, Buffalo Sabres, where he went to a Stanley Cup final, and then the LA Kings. Last, we get goalie Doug Grant, Detroit Red Wings. Played with the St. Louis Blues, too. Only played 77 NHL games. From Newfoundland. His stats for that year, I think he only played 32 games, 37 games, which is the most he ever played in a season. Had 2 NHL shutouts with a 4 goals against average. Detroit was a terrible team in the 70s. There we have it. 25 NHL cards from that series. This will go a long way to helping get there. I got some big names like Red Kelly, Serge Savard, and Guy Lapointe, and then a bunch of minor cards. It's really fun going to Heroes cards and comics and collecting. Just looking through the jerseys and the names and collecting. It's not quite like opening fresh packs of hockey cards like you did in the old days as a kid. When I ride my bike down to the local convenience store or grocery store and pay like 15 cents for a pack of cards and rip through them and eat the old gum from OPEECHEE. It tasted like cardboard within 5 minutes. It's not the same, but it's as close as I can get because hockey cards today are like way too much money, and you don't get gum with it. So any hockey card fans out there, let me know what you guys think of this set. And is there a favorite year you guys had for any hockey card fans? What's your favorite year? Leave comments in the comment section. Until next time, this is Hockey Night in Belmont.